It was a quiet Saturday morning when everything shifted. I was sitting in my kitchen enjoying a hot cup of coffee, idly scrolling through my phone, when I heard the front door creak open. A chill ran down my spine. I live alone. I never leave that door unlocked. My pulse jumped as I leaned around the corner to see who was there. And then I saw her, Karen, our HOA president, standing in my foyer like she owned the place. "Karen, what are you doing in my house?" I demanded, frozen in disbelief. She didn't even flinch. Instead, she slowly looked around, wrinkled her nose as if my home offended her senses, and said flatly, "You've got a code violation. I need to document it before it gets worse. Let me explain something about Karen. She's infamous in our neighborhood. Early 50s, always wrapped in pastel cardigans, carrying that brown leather clipboard like it's an official badge. Leave your trash can out an hour too long. She writes you up. Mailbox leans an inch too far. She's got photos and an email already drafted. But walking into my house uninvited, that was a whole new level. Get out, I said firmly, stepping closer. She scoffed, tilting her chin. You signed the HOA agreement. That gives me inspection rights. That was it. I grabbed my phone and hit record. No, it doesn't. Not inside my home. This is trespassing. For the first time, her smug look faltered. Just a flicker. I'm just doing my duty, she muttered defensively. By breaking and entering? I shot back. She flushed red, mumbling something about mold compliance, and tried to push farther into the house. I stepped into the hallway, blocking her path. I'm calling the sheriff, I said, locking eyes with her. Karen froze. She probably assumed I was bluffing. But I wasn't. I dialed, loud enough so she could hear the dispatcher answer. Yes, I said clearly. I'd like to report an HOA representative trespassing in my home without consent. She entered without knocking or permission. Karen stammered something about a misunderstanding, but I simply turned the camera toward her. Explain it to the sheriff, I said evenly. And for the first time, I saw something new in her eyes. Nerves. She spun on her heel and stormed out, muttering angrily under her breath. But she didn't realize it was already too late. The sheriff was on his way. 15 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up in front of my house. Karen was still outside, standing stiffly at the edge of my lawn, arms crossed, wearing that same bitter expression, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. The deputy who stepped out was a tall, no-nonsense man in his late 40s, the kind who'd probably seen more than his fair share of HOA drama. He adjusted his sunglasses, gave Karen a quick look, then walked over to me. "You're the one who called about an intruder?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I replied, handing him my phone. "I have her on video walking into my home without knocking or permission. She claims her HOA status allows her to enter." He watched the footage without a word. Behind him, Karen fidgeted nervously, arms wrapped tightly across her cardigan like it was a shield. When the sheriff turned to face her, she tried to stand taller, chin raised as if she were some kind of official. "Ma'am," he said calmly, "did you enter this man's home without permission?" "I was conducting an inspection," she snapped, lifting her clipboard like it was a warrant. "He signed an agreement with the HOA. I have the right." The sheriff cut her off immediately. "The HOA agreement doesn't override state trespassing laws. You're not law enforcement. You don't have the right to enter someone's private home without explicit permission." Her face fell. "I didn't break anything," she muttered weakly. The door was open. "I thought I heard someone in distress." "Really?" the sheriff replied dryly. "Because on the video, you said you were checking for mold." Karen froze. The sheriff sighed. "Ma'am, step over here and show me your ID." She hesitated. "Wait, you're not seriously— I'm citing you for criminal trespass, ma'am. You need to cooperate." I watched her face cycle through disbelief, then anger, and finally panic. "You're doing this based on his word. He's been difficult with the HOA for months." "That may be," the sheriff said calmly, "but this is about your actions, not your opinions of him." Karen finally handed over her ID, and the sheriff started writing the citation. I could see the tears gathering in her eyes as reality hit her. This wasn't a warning. This was real. "This will be filed with the county," the sheriff said, his tone firm but even. "If you set foot on his property again without permission, it could escalate." Karen sniffled, fighting to keep her composure. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. But deep down, I felt something close to justice. Real justice. For the first time since moving into this HOA nightmare, and then it happened. The sheriff handed her the bright yellow citation slip. Karen's carefully curated mask cracked. Right there on my front lawn, she broke. "I was just trying to maintain the standards of this community," she cried, her voice shaking. "If people start ignoring the rules, this place falls apart." The sheriff didn't flinch. "Enforcing standards doesn't mean breaking the law. You crossed a line. I've served this HOA for 12 years, she wailed, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. "You think he's the victim here? He's refused to paint his mailbox for 3 months?" I nearly laughed. The sheriff didn't. "Ma'am, step back and take a breath," he said firmly. "This isn't about mailboxes. It's about you entering a private residence without cause or permission. You're lucky he didn't press for criminal charges." That line hit her hard. She turned to me with watery eyes. "You really want to ruin someone's life over a misunderstanding?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She was starting to realize she couldn't HOA her way out of this one. Then my neighbor Sharon stepped outside, phone in hand. "I got the whole thing," she said proudly, holding it up. Karen gasped. "You filmed me?" "Darn right I did," Sharon snapped. "I've had enough of you harassing people. You tried to fine me for having wind chimes. Remember?" Karen's face twisted like she'd bitten a lemon. She turned back toward the sheriff, desperate. "You can't just let people record me." "You were in public," the sheriff said flatly. "And you were issuing citations yourself, weren't you?" "That clipboard's not exactly private property." Karen's jaw tightened like a trap. The sheriff gave her one last warning about setting foot on my property again, then turned to leave. Karen stood there clutching the bright yellow citation, her eyes darting between me, Sharon, and the small crowd forming nearby. I could see it in her face, the frantic calculation, the desperate search for some way to reclaim the power she'd just lost. But it was too late. That evening, Sharon posted the video to the neighborhood group. By the next morning, it had blown up beyond anything she, or Karen, could have imagined. A local reporter picked it up, posting the clip with the caption, "HOA president walks into resident's home without permission." Cries when cited, the comments were ruthless. Finally, one of them gets a taste of her own medicine. "She really thought the clipboard made her invincible, huh? I hope the resident sues. I didn't post a thing. I didn't have to." For once, Karen's actions spoke louder than any HOA notice ever could. When I woke up the next morning, I had 3 missed calls from neighbors and 1 email from the HOA board. Subject line, "Urgent, emergency meeting. Request regarding incident with HOA president." By noon, I was sitting in a folding chair in the community clubhouse, facing 5 board members. At the end of the long table sat Karen, blotchy-faced, puffy-eyed, her usual sharp posture wilted. Her once trusty clipboard was nowhere in sight. Gregory, the HOA vice president, cleared his throat and started the meeting. "We've all seen the footage," he said grimly. "This isn't about minor policy violations anymore. This is a legal matter." Karen opened her mouth, but Gregory raised his hand to silence her. "Karen, you walked into someone's home. You crossed every line of HOA authority. We have strict boundaries, and you shattered them." Karen's voice came out low and trembling. "I truly believed I was within my rights. I thought I was helping the neighborhood." I stayed silent, just watching. Susan, the treasurer, spoke next. "Karen, this isn't the first time we've had complaints. You fined Mrs. Linton for having a lawn chair out for 1 extra day. You cited Mr. Brooks for using unauthorized Christmas lights. And now this." Gregory leaned forward. "We spoke to legal counsel. If we don't act, the HOA itself could face liability. Your actions opened us up to lawsuits." Karen stiffened, eyes wide. "You're going to fire me?" "We're voting," Gregory said, lifting his hand. "All in favor of removing Karen Harrison from her role as HOA president, effective immediately." Every hand went up, one after another. No hesitation. Karen stared around the room like she couldn't comprehend what was happening. "You're turning your back on me," she whispered. "After everything I've done?" Susan met her eyes gently. "You did this to yourself. We can't protect you from the consequences anymore." Karen slowly rose to her feet, clutching her handbag like it might anchor her. She turned to me, lips parting as if she wanted to say something, but then she stopped. Her eyes fell to the floor. For the first time, Karen had no speech, no sarcasm, no threat. She walked out in silence. Outside, neighbors had gathered, watching through the clubhouse windows. Some had their phones out. A few clapped softly as she passed. I didn't cheer. I didn't feel joy. What I felt was relief, weightlifting. The reign of Karen was finally over. But I had no idea the story wasn't finished. A week passed. Slowly, the neighborhood began to breathe again. No random warnings on mailboxes. No angry letters about wind chimes or paint colors. People were out walking dogs, chatting, smiling. For the first time since I'd moved in, the place actually felt like a community. And Karen? She disappeared. No one had seen her since that emergency board meeting. Her curtains stayed drawn, her porch lights off. Rumor had it she was hiding out, too humiliated to face anyone. Some neighbors joked that maybe she'd gone off to terrorize some other poor neighborhood. Then, on a gray, rainy Thursday afternoon, there was a knock. Not on the front door, but on the side gate. Curious, I stepped outside. There she was, Karen, soaked from the rain, standing under a small black umbrella. No cardigan, no clipboard, just a plain gray coat and tired eyes. "Can I talk to you?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. I simply opened the gate a little and leaned against the frame. "I know I can't undo what I did," she said softly, barely meeting my gaze. "But I need you to hear me out." Her voice was nothing like the Karen who used to bark orders about trash bins. She told me everything, how she'd joined the HOA years ago with good intentions, how after her husband passed away, everything spiraled. "I didn't know how to grieve," she admitted. "So I clung to rules, to control. That clipboard made me feel like I still mattered." She looked up at me, eyes glassy. "It doesn't excuse what I did." "Nothing does. I violated your home, your trust. I deserve that citation. I deserve to lose my position." I stood silently, taking it in. Then she reached into her coat and handed me a folded envelope. "It's a formal apology," she said. "Not just to you, but to the entire neighborhood. I've already submitted my resignation to the HOA board. I won't be involved again." I took the letter but didn't open it yet. Before she left, she added, "I also donated $500 to the local youth center in your name. I figured maybe something good can come from my mess." And just like that, Karen turned and walked away. No shouting, no drama, no HOA clipboard. Just the sound of rain tapping softly on the umbrella as she disappeared down the sidewalk. Later that night, I opened her letter. It was handwritten, 3 pages long. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She owned every bit of it. Honestly, it was the most real, most human thing I'd ever seen from her. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight, but maybe someday it would. Because in the end, the woman who once walked into my home without knocking had finally learned how to knock. And if you enjoyed watching Karen finally face the consequences of her actions, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done if Karen walked into your home like that? For more outrageous HOA stories, real justice moments, and neighborhood showdowns, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a wild update from this neighborhood.